Outside of this one church town, there's a gold dirt road to a whole lot of nothing. Got a deed to the land, but it ain't my ground. This is God's country. We pray for rain and thank Him when it's falling, 'cause it brings a grain and a little bit of money. We put it back in a plate, I guess that's why they call it God's country. I saw the light in a sunrise, sitting back in a 40 on the muddy riverside, getting baptized in holy water and shine with the dogs running. Saved by the sound of a pin-found Dixie whistle in the wind, that'll get you heaven bound. The devil went down to Georgia, but he didn't stick around. This is God's country. We turn the dirt and work until the week's done. We take a break and break bread on Sunday, then do it all again, 'cause we're proud to be from God's country. I saw the light in a sunrise, sitting back in a 40 on the muddy riverside, getting baptized in holy water and shine with the dogs running. Saved by the sound of a pin-found Dixie whistle in the wind, that'll get you heaven bound. The devil went down to Georgia, but he didn't stick around. This is God's country. God's country. I don't care what my headstone reads or what kind of pine wood box I end up in. When it's my time, lay me 6 feet deep in God's country. I saw the light in a sunrise, sitting back in a 40 on the muddy riverside, getting baptized in holy water and shine with the dogs running. Saved by the sound of a pin-found Dixie whistle in the wind, that'll get you heaven bound. The devil went down to Georgia, but he didn't stick around. This is God's country. Yeah, I saw the light in a sunrise, sitting back in a 40 on the muddy riverside, getting baptized in holy water and shine with the dogs running. Saved by the sound of a pin-found Dixie whistle in the wind, that'll get you heaven bound. The devil went down to Georgia, but he didn't stick around. This is God's country.
Hey, Hector, what do you think about that song, huh?
I loved it. That was great.
Oh, man, talking about, God's country, especially where we're at right now. I'll tell you, man, what an inspiration. Hector, we're happy, we're honored to have you with us today. Even though today's show is going to be not sad, but nostalgic, because we're going to be honoring a man that was killed in the line of duty. And we know that you recruited him, you knew him as a young man, and we're going to tell his story. But brother, mil gracias for being on the show, and we're going to get started. But what we always do, we give everybody that's watching the show a welcome, and then we talk about what we're drinking, and then we'll get into the show. We'll start off with Benny Cruz, watching the show all the way from his home right now. He's our producer. We got Ceci Escano, who's been with us from the very beginning. She says she's drinking tonight ice water with cucumbers, with lime and chamoy. And Benny's asking her if she has a saladito with limon with it. We got Cocaine Cowboys. This man right here, he loves you, Hector, honors you and respects you. He's watching us. He's a former U.S. Customs agent, wrote a book called Cocaine Cowboys Uncensored, and he's actually watching us live right now from the Philippines. Hector,
Wow.
if you could talk to him. Chris Hastings, a man of God and a man of honor, and he has the utmost respect for you. We got Big VJ Juarez, who's been with us with Ceci from the very beginning. Greetings from Long Beach, brothers. Many blessings to you all. And he bought your book. And we got this guy here from San Diego PD. He's a retired detective, robbery and homicide detective. This guy, Hector, is like you. He's a legend with the San Diego Police Department. Hector, the most, once again, from Chris Hastings from the Philippines. Hector, the most highly decorated for bravery federal agent ever. 2.5 hour firefight with a cartel. And we got Sergio Martinez says, highly overdue. The man of the hour has finally arrived. And we got Benny, once again, talking about the Saladitos. And this guy right here, Hector, Jim DeJanis. He was known as Batman at Pelican Bay State Prison. He's
Wow.
watching us live right now from Thailand. And this guy is also a legend within the California Department of Corrections. He was stabbed in the on prison grounds. He was there when they had all the big riots. This guy is a legend among legends, and we're happy once again, brother. You're watching us live all the way from Thailand. And we got this brother right here, 209er, watching us, a correctional officer, I believe, in Soledad, one of the prisons over there, watching us from Northern California. And we got a lot of people watching. We go back to Sergio Martinez, Hector Saludos de San
Saludos.
Jose Califas, órale, de San Jose, California. And this will be the last one because I could go on all night. Greetings, gentlemen, from Santa Monica, GM 310. Guys, hey, we're excited, Hector, to have you on. It looks like Bobby, he's in a hotel right now. Retired name Sean McDonald. And okay, here we go. We got him back on. We have one quick question for you, Hector, from Dave. Hector, do you know DEA Agent retired name Sean McDonough?
No, I haven't had the honor of knowing who he is or meeting him.
Okay, all right, that'll be the last question. Guys, let's get started. Guys, let's start off what we always do. What are we drinking? And Hector, since you're our guest of honor, we'll start off with you. What are you drinking today? And tell us how good it is.
I am drinking tequila silver. It's a great tequila. It's very good actually. You can drink it straight. I drink it straight, or you can drink it in margaritas. But that's what I'm drinking. It's Members Mark Tequila Silver. Salud.
And once again, before we do the salud, where did you buy it at?
Actually, I bought it at Sam's Club.
Oh, Sam's
And
Club, okay, because everybody laughs at me because everything that I buy at Costco. At
right, and that
Costco.
they have it at Costco too. Yes.
Yes. Okay, so good. We got some other good man going to Sam's Club and Costco. And Sean, what are you drinking, brother?
We're back.
Oh, back to the old-fashioned Costco, right?
Yeah. And I don't know if we mentioned last week that we are partnering up with the First Responders Whiskey Society people for future shows and information and whiskeys.
And Sean, they're actually you wanted our address because they're gonna send us whiskey bottles so we could basically talk about them on the show, right?
Yeah, that's what Nick said. Yeah, and they got some other events that are coming up that we'll talk about in the near future.
Oh, right on. Okay, so the Southern California, what is it called? The Whiskey
First
Society?
Responders Whiskey Society. Yeah.
First Responders. Okay, you know what? As soon as you get their emblem, let me know. We'll start pushing their photo emblem on the show. And Bobby, I know you're all the way in Chattanooga, Tennessee, watching the show. I know it's hotter than hell over there, but what are you drinking, brother? I know you're in the hotel tonight.
I snuck. First of all, I think somebody has a TV or some. I hear background noise, so we can do something about that. But I went down I'm at the Embassy Suites in Chattanooga. So what I did is I snuck from their happy hour a Cuba Libre. So it's a rum, Coke Zero, and a lime. So that's what I'm drinking. And since I'm at a hotel, no cigars.
Diana.
Okay. Yeah,
TV.
you know what? Yeah, the TV. Yeah, it's Hector's. I just
Cut it off.
Stop them.
Okay,
good. Hector,
it
was your TV. Thank you. Guys, before we get started, Bob, before you do the introduction, we start talking about the show tonight. I just want to honor somebody with a toast. And first of all, last week on the 20th, June 20th, 2025, a correctional officer from New Folsom up in Sacramento committed suicide. And one of the things that we do here, Hector, we always honor our forgotten heroes. Only him, his family, and God knows what this gentleman was going through for him to commit suicide. He's a young man, and what we always say, you know what? May he rest in paradise. And there's no doubt at all in my mind that the moment that this man gave his last breath, that God and his angels and our brothers who have been forgotten sisters were there to take him to heaven. And with that said, brothers, we're going to do a toast in honor of Todd Binion, end of watch 6/20/25. Brother, God bless you and thank you for your service. Much prayer for your family. God bless you.
God bless you.
Salud.
Salud.
Last week we had a special episode, and we have a video we're going to play at the end for to honor our men and women. Hector, it's a video where we show pictures of I would say hundreds, but we didn't have time for hundreds of our police officers, first responders that have committed suicide, and we'll talk about it almost at the end of the show. But guys, with that said, Bobby, it's all yours to introduce our guests, and let's get started.
Well, first of all, the purpose of today's show, we wanted, obviously, number one, to honor our fallen brother, DEA Agent Richie FASS. And he was killed in line of duty June 30th, 1994. And Hector, our guest, who I'm going to introduce you in a second, knew him for many years and was very instrumental in recruiting Richard to join the DEA. So I'm going to let him tell the story. And first of all, I want to apologize. I've been on the road for a week. Some of you guys know I do a lot of consulting work, and I've been in Chattanooga and in northern Georgia for the last 7 days. I head back tomorrow. So normally I would have Hector's bio. Yes, yeah. I would have the bio, but since I don't have it, I'm going to do a really brief intro. Deserves much more. But Hector is one of the old school, literally an old school narcotics officer that back in the Wild West days when there was no rules, no training, very little training back then, because I came on later and I didn't even attend a DEA school till I was retired. We didn't have a lot of training for us local cops, even though we did it out on the street. So Hector comes from, he's a Vietnam veteran. He was a he was a medic, a combat medic in Vietnam. Then came on with, and I'll let him tell a little bit about how he started, but I know he was a veteran of the Bureau of Narcotics, which was before DEA, then joined DEA. And I'm going to have Hector explain when he came on and a little bit of what led him in the direction to go into law enforcement, especially in those years, a very dangerous field of undercover narcotics. Being a Spanish speaker, if you're a Spanish speaker, you're going to get the most dangerous cases, especially back then. So without any more delay, I want to introduce tonight's guest, retired DEA agent, highly decorated retired DEA agent, Hector Berrellez. Welcome, and we're honored to have you on.
Thank you. A little bit of my bio here. I joined DEA in 1973 after leaving the Army. Back in the old days, you did get training, but it wasn't a lot of training. They were hiring a lot of Hispanics, Spanish-speaking people with college degrees, of course, and some police experience, which I had some police experience because I had, right after I got out of the Army, I went to work as a policeman for the South Tucson Police Department. And after that, I worked there like 2 years, and from there I went to the Arizona Department of Public Safety, where I had the pleasure of working with people like Paco Marcel, which we all know, former drug agent. And in 1973, I was recruited into the DEA. I had applied for the FBI, but the FBI wasn't hiring, so the DEA recruited me, and I started my career as a drug enforcement agent with the DEA. Back then, like I said before, they didn't give us a lot of training, but the little training that we got was helpful. And the fact that I'd been in the Army and I knew how to use automatic weapons, lost rockets, and and M79 grenade launcher really helped me in my career with DEA. So not to get into a lot of detail as to what I did with the DEA outside of being assigned undercover. First in the States to where I got trained, meeting drug dealers in the United States. As I got more experience, I was sent to work undercover in Central and South America. I worked undercover in Mexico. I worked undercover in Bolivia. I worked undercover in Colombia. I worked undercover in Honduras, El Salvador. So I made the rounds, and basically it was very dangerous back then when you were undercover in these foreign countries, because a lot of times you didn't have any surveillance agents protecting you. As we experienced undercover agents know, in the States, when you go undercover, you have people watching your back, providing surveillance for you while you're meeting these criminals. However, back in the old days when you were sent undercover in foreign countries, you didn't have the privilege of having surveillance agents protecting you. As a matter of fact, back in those days, when you travel into foreign countries, they gave you a set of credentials which were not in your name, undercover credentials. And I always posed as a Mexican from Mexico. I had a passport, a Mexican passport under the name of Manuel Izárraga. I had driver's license, Mexican driver's license under that name, credit cards under that name. So when I was undercover in Colombia, of course, they asked me who I was, and to prove to them that I wasn't an undercover DEA agent. And I would say, look, I'm Manuel Izárraga, soy del Hermosillo, Sonora, from Mexico, and I would show them my credentials. And of course, I always carried a gun, and I always showed them my guns. It was normal. I mean, I'm out there buying drugs. They don't expect you to go out there and not be armed. So those were the type of assignments that I was involved in. Now, so there's two ways that DEA works in foreign countries. One is undercover, and when you're undercover, you go into a country, and you don't even go to the embassy. You don't meet with DEA agents over there. All your communications are via telephone. Of course, you don't want to be undercover with informants and criminals, and then go to the embassy, the U.S. embassy, where the DEA office is at, because, I mean, it would be idiotic to do that. You would burn your cover. So you didn't go to the office. You didn't meet with the DEA people there, and you went in and out and did what you had to do. Now, also later I was assigned overtly working out of an embassy and out of a consulate. But that's when you work with a mixed feds, when you work with the Mexican Army, or with the DFS in Mexico, F2 in Colombia, and you work with them, but you're overt. Okay, Kiki Camarena, when he was killed in Mexico, he was not undercover. He was an overt agent, even though he did some undercover work in Mexico. But the federal police, the foreign police, when you're overt, they know who you are. You have to work with them. And I worked both undercover initially, and then later when I was in charge of the Mazatlan office in Sinaloa, I was overt, meaning I would meet with generals and stuff like that. When you're undercover, you don't meet with anybody, I mean, other than crooks, and you're carrying your life in your hand. Very, very dangerous assignments. So now let's get a little bit to, that's my bio. I did 27 years with the DEA. I retired from the DEA, having been awarded the U.S. Attorney General Award for Heroism, provided to me at the White House. I was awarded the Attorney General Award for Heroism by Attorney General Ed Meese for basically very dangerous shootouts that I was involved in Mexico. And I also received the Medal of Valor from the Federal Bar. And these two awards are the highest awards that you can get in the agency. The U.S. Attorney General's Award for Heroism is like getting the Congressional Medal of Honor in the military, and of course the Federal Bar's Medal of Valor. I mean, that's another the highest award a federal agent can get for being involved in very dangerous assignments. Now the Medal of Valor, I want to tell you a little bit about that award. That is recognition from all the U.S. Federal agencies, the FBI, the Secret Service, U.S. Customs, ATF, all of the regional directors or the directors of those agencies sign off on that award, and I'm very proud to have been the recipient of those two very, very high prestigious awards in my career. Now, I don't know if I am the highest ever decorated agent, but at the time when I was awarded those, those commendations, I became the most recognized and awarded federal agent at my time.
Okay,
So
let me
now,
jump in.
yes, go ahead.
First of all, there's still a lot of background noise where you're at. We can hear people talking. If you could have them lower down a little bit.
Yes, let me. Okay, well, I think they got the message. It's just that I have a lot of people cleaning the house here. Okay, but go ahead.
Okay, and then all right. So, when did you meet Richard? Richard FASS. When did you meet Richie? I understand you knew his family. How is it that you came to know him? And how was it that you we talked about it about the
I met Richie Foss as a child. I know him when he was about 10 years old. I knew his mom and dad, his dad George and his mom Rosa. They would come and visit their aunt Angie Foss, who lived across the street from us, and little George, which was Ricky's brother, and Ricky would come over and hang out with us. We played with them. So I've known him from the time that he was a child into the time that he grew up to be a man. I knew him to have graduated from the University of Arizona with a degree. I also knew that he worked for the Arizona IRS for 5 or 6 years, and he showed a desire and asked me and my brother Art, who is also a retired DEA agent, about joining DEA. I told him that if he wanted to join DEA, that I definitely would help him, assist him by recommending him, and also ask him to use my name and my brother's name as references. So he did, and I called a fellow agent that was maybe high up in the DEA, Phil Jordan, a Hispanic friend of mine who was a deputy director at the time, and I said, listen, I have this friend of mine, great gentleman, straight, uncorruptible person, referring to Richard Foss. I said, you need to hire him. And he said, it sounds like he's very qualified. He's got the degree we need. He speaks Spanish. Yes, he does. He said, okay, Hector, next academy, we'll bring him on. And we were able to bring Richard Foss into the DEA back then.
So when he joined the DEA, I'm sure, was he in contact with you when he was going through the process, when he went to the academy? So did you know you knew he was going through, right? You knew he was going through.
Yes, he definitely kept in touch. He went to the academy, graduated from the academy with very high grades. Stayed in touch. He was assigned, his first assignment and only assignment actually was the Phoenix office. While there, he worked with my brother Art. My brother Art was an agent, very seasoned at the time. My brother Art had already done like 10 years in Mexico, and from Mexico they transferred him to the Phoenix office, where him and of course Richie Foss got reunited. They knew each other. As I said before, we knew him since he was a child. So my brother Art took him under his wing, trained him, advised him, counseled him, and of course, but they were very, very close. While working at the Phoenix office, I believe they knew Bob also. They were all there together. And so I can tell you, even though I wasn't there, most of the details of what happened, because my brother Art was there and he relayed to me basically what was going on, what had happened there.
Hey, Hector, what kind of a guy? Can you describe Richard Foss? I mean, how old was he when you first met him?
When I first met him, he was a child. He's probably, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years old that I remember. I mean, I probably met him when he was younger, but my brother Art and I were older than him. So, he was a kid. I mean, we played good guys and bad guys together. That's how long I knew Richard Foss. I've known him almost my entire life until God took him.
Hector, last year I had the honor. Bobby invited me to go to. It was during this time actually, to go honor him there at his gravesite. And when I was there, I met his brother, and his brother is a musician.
Billy,
And we went
Bubba,
to his. ¿Cómo se llama? What's his brother's
Bubba,
name?
George,
Bubba
George,
Foss, Billy.
George, yes.
yeah,
And
George,
and
George
he
Jr.
and I we went to his house afterwards, and he was telling me stories about him. Is there any stories that you could tell us about him and George and about the family, la mama, about the family in general, so people could know who we're talking about, not only the DEA agent but the young man that you knew?
Yeah, well, he was a typical kid growing up. I mean, spoke Spanish, grew up in a Chicano neighborhood there in Tucson. The family, of course, is a very religious family that they would go to church every Sunday, as we did. He was basically uh, counseled by his mom and dad that he should, get his education, which he did. He had a degree. So he was just a great, straight guy, uncorruptible, just a real gentleman. I mean, a guy you'd like to go out and have a beer with, or have a carne asada with. He was just a normal, great guy.
Yeah. Hey,
One of the things
Bobby.
that I remembered, because I mean I had the reputation of being always undercover and working a lot of undercover assignments. And one time he asked me, he says, Hector, he says, I still get very nervous when I go undercover. I still I have a lot of fear when I go undercover. How do you conquer that fear? And I told him, Richard, you don't conquer that fear. That fear is what keeps you alive. The day you have no fear, that day somebody's going to kill you. I said, that fear is your protection. That's what you need to feel. And you have to control it. He says, yeah, but sometimes I feel like I'm even trembling and then I feel that my trembling is going to show. And I said, just try to control it and calm yourself down. I said, remember when you're undercover, your all your senses, they're there with you. I said, you're watching everything that's going on. You have this sensory thing get into you, and that's your body telling you you're in danger, and you're never ever going to feel comfortable or relaxed undercover. He says, but you go and do long-term undercover. You're there with these crooks sometimes for months. And I said, I know, but I never ever lose sight of the fact that I'm in danger, and I am always fearful. And like I repeated it and told him, it's good to be fearful, Richard. That's what's going to keep you alive.
Yes.
Hey,
When
Bobby, can you share with us your first experience with Richard, how you met him, and
yeah,
share a story about him, if you don't mind?
yeah, I'm going to share how I first met him, and then a funny story that we did on a buy bus together. But what happened was that there was when Richard graduated from the academy, he came to Phoenix, and at the time they decided they wanted to put, because I was already maybe 2 years as an undercover narc, doing a lot of work with DEA. So they put him with some of us guys from Phoenix. So we took him out, do some little street buys, go out to the bars, and because as Phoenix cops, we're able to go into the bars locally and hang out. They give us buy money. So he got to do a little bit of that with us. Then fast forward, next thing I know, we run into each other again, and now he's doing kilo deals himself. He's doing kilo buys of cocaine. He's buying pedazos of heroin. Well, I was doing a deal where me and Rudy Casillas used Ricky as our money man, and we're dealing with these paisanas. We hit them up for 5 kilos of coke, and we went back and forth, and finally they said, "Well, we'll do 3. We'll sell you 3 kilos." You know, Hector, they do this all the time. We'll sell you 3. You see, no hay pedo. Half hour later, we'll come with the other 2. Well, we met him at a Smitty's parking lot, and me and Rudy Casillas show up, and Richie was our money man. So what happened was that he was in a different car. Well, when the deal went down, they gave us the 3 kilos of coke. I grabbed the 3 kilos. I was driving a 454 Super Sport, a Chevy Super Sport pickup. It was brand new. That was my UC ride. Instead of putting it inside the cab, I put it in the back of the cab, and then we're waiting, and then the bus team comes up and starts arresting people. Well, one of the paisas was able to. He was behind the truck. He jumped into my truck, and as everybody else is getting taken down, the suspect gets in his car in my truck and starts driving away in my truck with the dope in it. It was a disaster. And as he's driving away, luckily, David, you met me. I'm 6 foot tall. I'm not a giant, but I'm not short.
You're a strong guy too.
And
Yeah,
this little paisa was about 5'6", 5'5". He could not reach the pedal because I had the seat too far. So he was hitting the truck, going. And then Richie blocked him in, and we jumped out and saved our dope. And I got a lot of ribbing for that because this little guy stole my undercover truck with our 3 kilos of coke. And we laughed. Richie gave me a bunch of shit about that. It was hilarious. It wasn't funny at the time, but it's funny now. And that was our funny story together.
Well, I know that Richard FASS, when he would call me a lot of times, he would say that, he was used undercover too much. And
Yeah.
but Bobby, Richard. I mean, Richard was a guy that he had a hard time saying no to people. And he would ask me, he says, what do you do when all these other people that don't speak Spanish want you to go undercover in their cases? And I sometimes I'm afraid, or I don't think I want to do it, but I have a hard time saying no. And I said, no, if you ever feel that you're in real danger, no, don't do it. I mean, you can always, excuse me, guys. I mean, no, some background noise over here. I told him, I said, you have to learn to say no sometimes, especially if you know that you're being assigned something that is very dangerous. I a lot of times would look at when before you go out on an undercover thing, Bob, you've done a lot of undercover work. You do your plan. Your plan. You plan it out. Okay, what are we going to do? We're going to go undercover. We're going to show money. What's going to be the bus signal? Are we going to be wearing a wire? And is it cool to wear a wire because these guys might search you and find the wire? So those are a lot of things that are discussed in pre-planning the operation. And so a lot of times myself, if I thought that I didn't like what they were planning for me to do as an undercover operative, I would tell them, look, I'm not going to go into a house, or I'm not going to go into an airplane. Why, Hector? They have an airplane. I don't care. They might get me in the plane and fly me. And what are you guys going to do? They fly me out of town. I mean, so I ain't going into an airplane. I can meet the guy at the airport, but I'm not going to go in the plane. Well, they want to show you the dope in the plane, and I said, well, no, I'm going to have them bring the dope out. Let me handle that. But scratch that out of the plan. I'm not going in the plane, or I'm not going to go into that house alone. So a lot of times, and here's the problem with Richard. He was such a nice guy that a lot of times he was reluctant to say, hey, look, don't do it like that. Let's change it a little bit here. Or I'm not going. If you insist that I do this, it's too dangerous. I'm not going to get yourself another undercover operative. I'm not doing it. But Richard was a nice guy, and I know he had a lot of times problems saying no to people.
This is the problem that I saw a lot with undercover deals. I got to the undercover unit with Phoenix PD. Once I started doing a little bit of weight, where I start showing that I could do the deals with the paisas on more weight, they send me to DEA. Well, I get to DEA and I have older guys are telling me how to do how to do a deal. In reality, they've never done one before because there's the percentage of there's a lot of guys that are working undercover units. There's a small percentage of guys that are actually doing the undercover deals. That's just the way it is. And I would have guys that had never done a deal trying to tell me how to do an operation plan, how to do this, how to do that. But in reality, they had never done one. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm going to decide how I'm going to do it. This is my life. And I used to tell Richie the same thing. Now that you got the experience, You decide how you're going to do it. You have to feel comfortable. And what you said about the fear, that fear never left me. I had that fear all the time, but it's a fear you learn how to control. It's a fear that keeps you alert. And I used to tell him, you're always going to feel fear. I always feel it. Even if I'm buying a $20 rock of crack, I felt fear that somebody's going to recognize you. Usually, at a deal, if they recognize, they're just going to walk away. I was more fearful that they were going to believe I was a legit criminal and pull out guns and try to rob me. That's our worst fear right there.
Hey, Bobby, we have a question. Go ahead, Sean. Go ahead.
The question is for Bobby and Hector both. You just hit a nerve a little bit. When you guys are putting in your operational plan for a takedown or a buy bust or whatever, who is actually putting the plan together, and who's got the final say on how it goes down? Is it
Let me
somebody
explain
like
that.
Bobby, some guy that has, is in the unit but doesn't have experience?
Okay. What you had going on, and Bobby will agree with me. You have agents that are called the case agents. They are running the case. They have the informant. They're controlling the case, and they don't speak the language, whether it be Chinese, Spanish, what have you. So then they get you, the Spanish speaker. They ask you to assist them and go undercover in that case. So they are the ones that are doing the pre-planning of the case, and that's when you're the undercover agent that's gonna go and risk his life. That's when you have to learn to say no a lot of times. Say no, I don't like your pre-plan. I don't like it. I'm not gonna go in there. I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna do that. Too dangerous. I know because I've been there. And so that was me. I would say, listen, I'm not gonna get in that plane. A lot of times they would tell me, meet the guy. They're gonna fly in with a dope and meet him in the plane. I said, I ain't getting in that plane. Why? I said, what did they decide to fly me out? What are you guys gonna do? Are you guys gonna know if you fly me to Austin or San Antonio or New York? Or once I get in that plane, I'm in their hands. I have to be in control. And I don't like your plan, so we change it, or else find yourself somebody else to do your undercover work. I'm not doing it that way. But the informant says that I don't care what the informant says. It's my life. So we do it the way I feel comfortable, and let me talk to the crooks. Let me meet him at the plane, and I'll tell him, I'm not getting in your plane. You come and talk to me out here, you bring your dope out here, or else I'm not doing it. Many times, many times the crooks especially, they want to tell you, we're not going to deliver here, we're going to deliver at my house. And I said, I ain't going to your house. I don't want to know who you are. What do you want to bring to your house for? Or we're going to do it here. Then no, we're going to do it in a safe place, at a parking lot in a mall or whatever, where you can't rip me off. I don't want you to know who I am, and I don't care who you are. You can tell me you're Juan Perez or Alves Perez or whatever, Fabian Lopez. I don't care. I want to do this dope deal, and I don't want to get ripped off. I don't even want to know who you are. Which they trusted me more when I told them, I don't even want to know your name, dude. I don't care. Let's get this thing done, and we'll worry about who you are later. Let's get to know each other. But like I said, that's one of the things that Richard FASS always told me, that they were always wanting him to do this and that, and I tell him, say no. Say no to them. I'm not going to do it like that. And that's what cost him his life in that case where he lost his life. He couldn't say no.
Hey, Bobby, before we get on the operation when he died, we're going to talk about that. Tell us about him. I mean, this is something that you always talked about, the empanadas. Tell us the empanada story, so our listeners could understand that he wasn't just a DEA agent. Was he a father? Did he have kids? How long was he married? Let's talk about who he was, and then we'll get into the last operation. But when I had you on initially, about a year ago, 2 years ago, you talked a lot about the empanadas. Share that with our listeners, if you don't mind.
Right. I'll go into it. We can. There's still a lot of background noise in the background.
Yeah, you know what? It's at Hector's house. I think he has no control over it.
Okay.
We'll just go on with the show. Yeah. Go ahead, Bobby. Tell us about the empanadas. Was he married? How many kids did he have? How long was he working before the last operation?
Well, Hector was married. He had kids. He had kids from a prior marriage from his wife had kids from a prior marriage. He lived close to my house, so we worked a lot together. And we also he used to come over to my house, and there was a panaderia by my house called Gamboa's, and they don't like me there anymore, but that's another story. But I introduced him to Gamboa's, and they had these are empanadas de carne. We would eat the Mexican empanadas de calabaza, the dessert ones. So he would come. We did a surveillance. We had to drive to Tucson to go meet a bad guy, and we stopped at some panaderia that he knew there in Tucson. And I still stop at that place; it's still open. And I remember we bought like a bag of a dozen or something, and we thought, oh, we'll eat one or two for the road, and we'll split them when we get home. Well, we ate it. By the time we got back to Phoenix, we ate the whole bag between the two of us. Right before he was murdered, here I had left. I was no longer in undercover. I was back in the road working patrol. And he had been telling me about this deal that he was working, which was that last buy bust he was trying to work. And he was telling me about it. And that, I don't know if it's going to happen. And he told me a little bit of concerns about it. And I remember he was getting ready to leave. He was telling me Friday they're going to have my going away. He even told me they were going to have it catered. I think it was one of the barbecue places, famous barbecue place.
And Bobby, he was gonna be transferred over to
Monterrey,
Mexico. Okay, he was gonna get transferred there.
He was going to get transferred to Monterrey, Mexico. So what he was doing, from what I remember, because he told me this, he was going to go to Friday was going to be he wasn't going to go to Mexico from there, but he was going to take some time off, go to Tucson, get his affairs ready and done, arranged in Tucson. And then I think he was going to come back to Phoenix and then take off to Monterrey from there. Well, he had come over, I'm guessing, 4 days before that Friday. And he shows up to my house, and he had just got the results from his physical that, when I went to Mexico, I had to get my physical, and your doctor gives you results. And he goes, yeah, I just come back from my physical. And the doctor said that my cholesterol, my blood pressure, is starting to go up a little. I'm going to have to start working out. And he has a bag of empanadas. I said, well, do you want to go eat healthy? He goes, no, here. He gives me one. And he goes, let's go to El Nuevo Taquito. It was our favorite place there in Glendale, about 59th Avenue. So we go to El Nuevo Taquito. We go eat over there. And then he dropped me off. And that was the last time I saw him. That Friday, I was coaching my son's Little League baseball team. And I knew he was trying to do the deal, but I had thought he had called it off. It was done. And I'm coaching my son's Little League baseball team. And all of a sudden I get back then a pager. I still had a pager, 999, which Phoenix PD code, officer down. And I kept getting 999. I couldn't get to a phone. I dropped I handed my son over, and I got over to a payphone. And I called Ernie Moreno, who had been my partner in narcotics. And I could hear the emotion in his voice. And he said, DEA was just involved in a shooting. And I said, Ed? He says, we're hearing that Richard was shot. We think he's dead. And I said, where are they at? And he said, they're on their way to St. Joe's. And I went straight to St. Joe's and got there. And by the time I got to St. Joe's, he was already pronounced dead. So that was on my side. That was the deal. It was horrible. And Hector, where were you at?
I was in LA, and I got the call, of course, from my brother Art, who was there. He was there in Phoenix, and he wasn't out on the deal because that wasn't his group that went out. It was Delbert Salazar's group, and of course I know Delbert, and you know Delbert. Delbert worked with me on Operation Leyenda here in LA before he got promoted and went to Phoenix as a group supervisor. And so my brother Art was very, very, he was crying on the phone, and he said, they just killed Ricky FASS, and we call him Ricky. We never call him Richard. They just killed Ricky, man. I said, what do you mean they just killed him? What happened, Art? And he said, well, he said, undercover, and there was a ripoff, and I'm very upset, and I don't know why. I just left him, Hector. He says we just had his going away lunch, and he's going to Monterrey, and this was his last day in Phoenix. He was leaving. They were leaving this weekend. His furniture and everything was already in Monterrey, Mexico, and my brother was crying, and he said, Hector, he says, I'm very upset. I'm very upset, and I said, tell me what happened, and he told me. He says he went undercover into these crooks, and he said he was supposed to wear a wire, and I don't know. I saw the pre-planning report. He said he showed it to me. Ricky showed it to me, and I said, good. You're going to be wired. That's awesome. That he said, because I'm going to go undercover by myself. He says I'm using Mike Telonero, and of course I know all these guys. I know Mike, and he said he's going to be the money guy. He's going to have the money in a car close by, and but yeah, I'll be wired. So Art said, okay, good. That's good. If something happens, at least the surveillance agents can hear on the radios in the patrol cars or in the surveillance cars that what's going on. Well, what my brother said, well, but then they scrapped the wire at the last minute, bro. And I said, what do you mean they scrapped the wire? Yeah, I said, they decided that he shouldn't wear a wire. And I said, oh my God. So he went undercover, it was a ripoff, and they shot him and killed him. And I said, did you guys kill the bad guys? Did he take any of the bad guys out? And my brother said, no, because they blew his trigger finger was blown off. I guess my brother went out there and saw him. Right after the shootout, they went out there. And he said they blew his trigger finger, and the guy shot him in the hand. And the informant said that Ricky threw his gun so that they could shoot back, the informants. And then they executed him. They just shot him in the head and just finished him off. Oh, my God, I go, what happened to the crooks? Well, he said, we arrested 2 of them and 1 got away. And so that's the way it was explained to me. And I've talked to my brother about this often, again, because he was at the office when it all went down. And my brother just said that it was very not well planned, actually not well planned, because had they done the case agent didn't do the background investigation of these guys. These guys had already committed 2 rip-offs here in L.A. They were from here. In L.A., I mean L.A. now, or in Riverside, and they had killed a guy on a rip-off over here, and they were wanted over here. So obviously they didn't know that in Phoenix when Ricky met him, that these guys had reputation for being rip-off artists.
Yeah, we when that deal happened, I attended a briefing the very next day at Phoenix PD, and they started telling us that, it's like what we've, at the time it was hard to accept. David knows Saul Ayala. Saul Ayala is the most tenured undercover officer in the history of Phoenix PD, and we work on undercover school. I've helped him with an undercover school together. And we use this story as an example. You and I know, Hector, that young in our career, we did things, and later we said, what the hell was I thinking? Because we learned from our mistakes. And luckily, some of those mistakes didn't result in our deaths. But we used similar scenarios as an example, what not to do. Don't rush. Especially don't rush to these deals. And yeah, it's horrible. It was a.
Hey, Bobby, what was the after action plan? What was the sense of urgency to get this deal done on Richard's last day?
Well, once he's gone, I don't know if there was anybody else that was going to be able to do it. That was I don't know if that is actually the reason, but I know that he was leaving to Tucson, then eventually going to Mexico, and it was like his last day. He literally had just got his plaque for his time in Phoenix. He grabbed that plaque, he wrapped it in a T-shirt, and he stuck it behind the back seat of his truck. After he was dead, they recovered his plaque, wrapped in a T-shirt behind his truck.
That's correct. It was his last day at the office. He wasn't going to come back anymore. Mm-hmm. They had a like I said, a luncheon for him, a going away luncheon, which my brother Art was there with him when they gave him the plaque that Bob just referred to. I don't know what they were thinking, honestly. It upsets me to think that they would send him undercover on his last day at the office. As Bob said here, he was supposed to go to Tucson the following day, and from there, they were going to fly to Monterrey. His furniture had already been sent to the to a house he had rented in Monterrey, Mexico. So I don't know why you would send. It's always because there's not enough Spanish-speaking undercover agents. They never had enough of us. And my brother Art was involved in something else where they needed him. I think it was in a wiretap where they needed a Spanish speaker in there. They never had enough Spanish speakers, so I guess he was the only one available. So they said, Richie, why don't you go undercover here? It's your last day, but we need some help here. And like I said, Richie was the kind of guy that had a hard time saying no. So he says, okay, I'll go undercover on my last day at the office, and they ended up getting killed.
What a final note there on that. I mentioned it before. I mentioned on this show. I told Hector about this. When Richie was getting ready to leave, we had talked about, hey, once you get settled down, hey, come down, visit, and you come down and you'll have a nice house, everything. Yeah, I'll go visit you. I planned on, I was going to go down there. I'd never been to Monterrey. Well, time is, the way things happen in life. I retired from the PD in 2005. I do my overseas contracting work. My last contracting job overseas was 2014 to 2017. And I was I get sent to Monterrey. I become the regional program manager for ANL, the Merida program. So I was in charge of, I worked out of the Consulado, U.S. Consulate in Monterrey, Nuevo Leon. When I got there, I realized I was the same building he was going to. I got to the old Consulado. It's a new one now. We moved to a new one. My first 3 months, we worked out of the old one. So I went up, met with the group supervisor, DEA, and he introduced me to the secretary. The secretary had been there for so long, she remembered when they selected his house, they had received his furniture, everything was ready. And she says, yes, that was such a sad day for us because we were so excited to receive him and his family. His kids were all coming over. So when we were closing down the last Friday, that the Consulado, the old Consulado, as we were moving to the new one, and I won't burn him because he's still there, but a couple of people helped me. We went to what would have been his office, and after everyone was gone, we disconnected the fire alarms, and we smoked a cigar and drank some whiskey in his office before we baptized that office. That would have been his before we walked out.
And then Bobby, that was 11 years later. That was 11 years later, right? Later.
Yep. From 90, he was killed in 94, and I was there in 2014. 2014.
Hey, Hector, I have a question for you. The suspect after he murdered Richie, after he murdered him, he flees and he goes to Mexico. But Bobby, how many years did it take for him to be caught in Mexico? How many years went by?
I don't recall off the top of my head right now, but it was, I'm thinking it was I'm guessing 7 years or so, about there, maybe even more.
That's correct. That's about correct.
Did you ever go after this guy, Hector? Because
yes, we in the end, because we had all the sources in Mexico. We were investigating, of course, the murder of Kiki Camarena, and yes, of course, we got very much involved, contacting all of our sources in Mexico. We had a lot to do with locating him. We located him on numerous occasions, but he paid off the comandantes or whatsoever. He was getting a protection from corrupt government officials in Mexico, as always is the case. But yeah, we got involved in that, and it was about 7 years that we finally got him. We got him extradited and brought him back, and he was convicted and sentenced to, I believe, a life sentence here in the United States. That was with Tim Vasquez.
Was he connected to a cartel or anything, or who was he connected with?
He was. He had money, and he was connected with other traffickers. He never stopped dealing drugs. He continued dealing drugs even after he killed Richie FASS. And the reason we really wanted Agustin was because he was the trigger man. He was one of the guys that actually executed him. Because what went down in that undercover meeting was they told the suspects, which is three of them, they told Richard FASS to tell the guy where's the money, and he said the money's in a car. A friend of mine has it. He said call the guy and tell him to come in and bring the money. And Richard FASS says no, I'm not gonna call in the money or deliver the money to you guys until I see the dope. They didn't have any dope. It was a out and out ripoff. That's when they pulled their guns on him. They beat him to the draw, number one, and they tell him at gunpoint, tell the guy to bring the money in. That's when Richie FASS went for his gun, according to the informants and the report that I saw. And the first round that they fired hit him in his trigger hand. He lost his trigger finger. He couldn't use his gun after that, and he threw the gun at the informants. It was two informants, brother informants. Threw the gun at them. Of course, they were afraid to do anything, and that's when they actually Agustin was the one that executed him, shot him in the head. After that, and of course he was bleeding from his hand, and he went down on his knees, and that's when he shot him in the head. Shot him more than one time, and killed him. That's the way that whole thing went down, and then they took off. Of course, they didn't know he was an undercover DEA agent, and took off running, and the surveillance agents came in. I'm surprised they didn't kill these guys, but they didn't. They arrested two, and somehow Agustin Vasquez was able to escape the scene. That's what I understand what happened there.
Yeah, they emptied a 45 into him is what they did at point blank range.
Yes, it would happen from what I know, an auto shop or something like that in Glendale. It was a business location. I think it was was it an auto shop? Was it a mechanics or body part shop? Anyway, that's the way where it happened from what I know.
Hey, Bobby, did any major changes occur after his death? Can you talk about that? Because you were still in the department, and Hector, you weren't assigned there, but did your brother ever talk about, I mean, it wasn't just a DEA agent that died, it wasn't just a funeral. Was there any major changes caused by his death?
I understand that, yes, and they use it at the academy as the three P's. Piss, poor planning, results in piss poor performance. That honestly, I mean, I love the DEA, and I don't want to badmouth the DEA, but in that case, the case agent, and I don't know who the case agent was, didn't do his full homework, because what you do before you go undercover is you identify the suspects. You have to know who you're dealing with. If you can, you try to find out as much information as Bob will tell you on the suspects. But like I said, mistakes are made, and Murphy's Law, if something's going to go wrong, it always goes wrong. I mean, there was another case similar to that in here in LA where the suspect showed up in a stolen car. And I tried to put the case down and said, hey, something's wrong here. These guys we ran the place and it's a stolen car. Something's wrong here. No, they said, let him meet with the undercover agents. Well, it's a ripoff. Killed two of the undercover agents and wounded a third undercover agent. It was in Pasadena over here. But a lot of times I said, I mean, I was a supervisor. Whenever there was something wrong that I didn't like, I just shut the case down. And in this case, had they done their homework, they would have found out that these guys had already committed two rip-offs and were wanted for murder even in LA before this went down. So, like I said, I don't want to badmouth anybody, but Bob, you have to agree with me. It was poorly planned. Not only that, why at the last minute did they decide to cancel him wearing a wire? I don't know who called that shot, but that was a wrong call. They should have sent him wired. That way the surveillance agents could have heard when they when they argued about bring the money in, and that's when they should have came in and rescued him. But there was no wire.
And I said, we use this case when we teach at undercover school on how not to do a deal. Don't rush. There is no dope in the world worth a life. You know, if it's that dangerous, don't do it. I have a partner that I worked a lot of undercover narcotics deals, and he was the one that took me into DEA. And I remember one day we were going to go out and do a deal. I had a bad feeling, but I was too junior to even tell him. I should have. And we're on our way. We already had surveillance. We're going to try to do the buy bust. He looked at me. He goes, I feel this in my gut. It's a bad deal. So we pulled over. We had SWAT. We were using SWAT on that deal. We actually had a sniper. We reached out and said, take them down now. We already had enough conspiracy. They took them down. They had no dope. They were heavily armed. They were all from Sinaloa. And we think they're going to try and rip us off. So you have to trust your instinct on something like that.
Our cases down because my instinct told me that they were going to try to rip me off. When they insist on doing it their way, when they insist on having full control of how the situation is going to go down, something is wrong. I had a case also, like you said, where I was with my undercover partner, Bobby Boggs, and we met him at a park, and they had already sold us an ounce of heroin. And supposedly they had a couple of kilos of Mexican heroin, which I didn't trust these guys to begin with. They weren't Mexican, they were Cubans. And when we meet with them at the park, they said, we'll meet at the park, which is fine. I said, okay, as long as it's a park, we'll meet with them. But it was a park that was close to a butcher shop that they owned. And they said, okay, let's go to the butcher shop, our butcher shop, and when in the back then we'll show you the rest of the heroin. And I told Bobby, I ain't going. I said, you know what, guys, you bring the heroin here, show it to me here. I ain't going with you to the butcher shop. So I put it down. I said, I don't like it. It sounds like they're trying to rip us off. I put it down. Guess what happens? Another group in LA the informant takes the case to another group, and they decided that they went undercover. The informant didn't tell them that I had put it down, and guess what? They handcuffed the three undercover agents. They were going to execute them. Thank God surveillance caught up on it. They had a wire, and they were able to arrest the guys and save the undercover agents, which had already been handcuffed in a hotel room. They were going to kill them.
Right.
So
hey,
and
guys,
those were the same Cubanos that I had put the case down on.
Right.
Hey, Hector, our worst enemy has come upon us. We've already been for an hour and 2 minutes. It seems like literally 15 minutes, man. What an outstanding show. But Bobby, you know what? Here's his grave. And last year when we went, those were the cigars, the tequila that we drank there. Why don't we do a toast on, and I'll let Bobby, it's all yours. We'll do a toast in his honor. And Hector, de veras, de todo corazón, thank you for joining us and sharing with us your experiences with Richard FASS and your stories, which are, I hope his wife, his kids are watching it, because I mean, this is something that we never want to forget him. The man, the legend, the hero, a true American hero. And Bobby, it's all yours.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us. If you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, share, all that. But really honored to have you here. I'm touched. Anyone that's joined us in honoring our fallen brother. So I just want to, to our brother, our fallen brother, Richie FASS, never forgotten. Here's to Richie, never forgotten, and he will forever live in our hearts till the day I take my last breath. Cheers. Here he is.
I'd like to have a few words before we close. I would like to thank everybody for having me on this show. For those of you that haven't watched The Last Narc, it's a docuseries on the murder of Kiki Camarena. Please do so. It's on Amazon Prime. The Last Narc. Also, I have a podcast which is also called The Last Narc, and I have a book in Amazon which you can get. It's called The Last Narc, and it basically deals with the murder investigation of Enrique Kiki Camarena. Thank you so much.
And Hector, we want you to come back. We want to have a special episode with you on PTSD.
Yeah, I'll be more than glad. Thank you for having me, guys.
Salud.
Thank you for having me. Salud a todos. May God bless you guys.
Yes.
Mil gracias, Hector. Mil gracias.
You guys are very welcome. Thank you.
And you're definitely coming back to talk about PTSD. Thank you, and God bless you, brother.
God bless you, brother. Take care. Take care, guys.
Thank you, Andrew.
Hey man, Bobby, what an episode, man! To hear the story about the man who actually recruited him. You had the honor of working with him for those many years, and that last operation. Hopefully, that's somebody that's watching today that is still on the job, and if he's ever faced or she's ever faced with a scenario like that, learn how to say no. What would be your advice, Sean, to somebody that's watching the show that is put in a predicament like that? And Bobby, what would be your advice? We'll start off with you, Sean.
Good question, Dave. And you know how I operate. You've seen me out in the field. We have Plan B, Plan A, Plan B, a Plan C. In fact, I just sent Chris a message. Look at my post that I just sent him. We did a workup on a warrant down in South Bay in Team 9, and it was Dave Highsmith, may he rest in peace, put it together. And I kept asking questions like I'm looking at it as a SWAT tactical warrant. And Chris looked down at me, sitting down, and he goes, "This ain't no SWAT warrant." And I go, "Oh, okay." But this is the way I look at things. You have to look at, what if this happens? How are we going to react? The whole thing with Ricky Foss, taking away the wire at the last minute, and I'll go beyond that. Putting him out there on his last friggin' day, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
It wasn't worth it. I mean, get somebody else to go in there and work this guy.
What advice would you give for that officer that is put in the same predicament today?
If the hairs on the back of your neck are standing up and you get that feeling in your gut, like Bobby said, that something's not right, step back, rethink, regroup, and come up with another plan.
Yeah. Bobby?
Early in my career, and I just saw Saul jump on, we were really reckless. I think we had this thing that we wanted to prove to everyone that we were not afraid, we were hombres, all this other stuff. Later on, you start learning from your experiences because we made mistakes early on.
Oh, yeah.
That we easily could have, lost our lives on them. And I think Saul did it for so long.
Yes, he did.
You learn how to, you just, after a while, and also that's what we've always talked. You need strong supervisors in these groups because you need a strong sergeant. Because the guys that are doing this, they're alpha dogs, and they feel invincible. And that's where you need a sergeant that doesn't want to be everybody's best friend, that can learn to say no.
No.
Yeah, a no. And no matter if the guys get pissed off, no. You need a guy that needs to say no. And that's I had very few sergeants that ever told me no. I think by that, especially once I was experienced, when I needed someone to pull the reins on us, pull us back a little bit, because you need a strong sergeants, just like in SAU. If you're a SWAT guy, if you're a SWAT tactical guy, you need strong supervision, especially to identify someone that's taking risk and can hurt the rest of the unit.
And guys, I'm going to take it one more step forward to both of you. We'll start off with you again, Sean. What if that officer has a sergeant that has no backbone, that doesn't know how to say no? What does that detective do then? Sean, start off with you.
That is tough, because you're looking at a couple of different aspects on that. This poor guy is sitting there going, okay, if I say no, it's insubordination. What's this guy going to do? My career over? Am I going to get kicked out of the unit? La-di-da-di-da. But, if you really, really, really feel that this is not a good thing to do, you got to stand up and say, no, this is how I feel about it. And if they put somebody else in there, and it's a tough thing to do. It really is. Trust me, I've been there, done that.
Yeah.
Got my mouth shut on a lot of shit that I shouldn't have. And some things I was too vocal on stuff, and it came and bite me in the ass later on.
And Bobby, what's your recommendation on that officer that's watching the show right now and that has a sergeant, has no backbone, but yet, like Sean said, the hair in the back of his neck is sprung and he knows there's something wrong? What does he do?
We had towards the end of my career, I was no longer doing undercover work, but we were supporting undercover units doing tactical work. We had a sergeant that wanted to be everybody's best friend. He was weak. He was one of the nicest guys I ever worked with. He was one of the worst supervisors because he was dangerous. And we were going to cover an undercover deal. And I walk in and saw the plan. And I said, you guys are going to get ripped off. And the sergeant would not speak up. And me and another guy who were senior guys, we changed the whole plan. He got pissed off at us, but we changed the plan. And afterwards, it was like, but during a 5-year period, me and another guy, we were partners, but we knew each other. We ran that squad over a sergeant that had no business being there. But we had to speak up. But, we're to the point, there were times where he would say, you guys think you guys run this squad. And, I thought, well, if he kicks me off, I'll find somewhere else to go because you have to make the decision when lives depend on it. And this guy was super dangerous. It was a joke to him. That's what it was. Everything was he just punched in and punched out. He didn't care.
Yeah. Well, guys, you know what? Time is against us. And Bobby, thank you once again, brother, for running the whole month of June. Hopefully next year, actually not hopefully, we will do it again. Every year we want to honor Richard FASS. We don't want his memory ever to die down. I truly believe that every time we talk about, men like that or just people that have passed, you know what, we bring them back alive again in our hearts, in our minds, because you know what, we never, ever want them to be forgotten. With that said, Sean, any last words, brother?
No, great episode, great learning points, especially for people who are working UC and in anything. You have to be vocal. If it doesn't feel right, it's not right. And,
Bobby, go ahead, Sean.
No, that's good.
Bobby?
Well, like I said, thanks again, everyone, for coming by. Monday, I will be in Tucson with the tequila and the cigar, and it's going to be 108 degrees. Yeah. So it'll be a short cigar, but I'll be there on Monday.
Hey, guys, I want to play this song. It's called A Mi Modo. It's in Spanish, which means I did it my way. It's I guess, a Spanish song to Frank Sinatra, but this is a corrido. And it talks about, I lived my life my way. And, Bobby, it hurts. I never met Richard, but every time we lose somebody, in law enforcement, we lose part of us ourselves because they're our brothers, they're our sisters. Even though I never met him, but I know the way you described him, the way Hector described him, and the way Saul Ayala, when he was on the show, and then his sergeant described him, dude, you know what? He lived every day of his life, and he didn't die the way he expected to die. But you know what? He was a man that he lived his life accordingly, a man of honor, a man of respect. And, there's no better way that, at the end of the day, like I always say, live your life like it's your last day on earth. Enjoy every moment of it. Enjoy the highs, enjoy the low. And like you said, Bobby, you know what? Trust the process, no matter what it may be. But above and beyond, trust the author. Bobby, once again, thank you. You did a great job. Next week, Sean, tell us real briefly who we have next week. You're in charge of all the month of July.
Next week, we're going to have Juan Gonzalez from Eagle Eye Security. I worked with him in the past. Former tech guy, SEAL. He's really one of the top-notch personal security persons that I have ever worked with. And
he's a former Navy SEAL, so hopefully he'll have some good stories about the Navy SEAls.
Yeah, well, he's going to talk about that and faith also. Big on faith. Yes.
Can't wait.
So, yeah, I can't wait either.
It's going to be a great episode. Thank you, guys. God bless you. We'll see you guys next week.
No hay método escrito, a mi modo he cometido errores, eso seguimos.